As we're returning to our seats, it gives me great pleasure to welcome back to the stage the AP 21 APR guru, the data and evaluation queen herself is in the building. Let's give a rounding applause for Dr. Deborah Ortloff, the one and only. Deborah, I have to, Claire.
Oh my gosh. Okay, gold stars for everybody. All right, thank y'all for the warm welcome. Guess what? It's 21 APR time. That's what I like to hear. Okay, so I just got new glasses and I can't get used to them. So I may or may not take them off 15 times during this presentation. But I am super excited to be here, and we're going into another year of data collection on 21 APR. And I know that might, not be what you're as excited about as me. That's fair. You could be almost as excited. I feel like that would be fair. Almost as excited. It's also really exciting, and you've heard me say this, because when the department adopted new GEPRA, and we're really glad they did, because they're a lot better than the old ones, and we're all beginning to talk the same language, right? We're all beginning to say, hey, let's talk about engagement and what that means when we're talking about GEPRA measure number 5, because we're all measuring GEPRA measure number 5, right? That's a really big change. It's a giant change. But we're going into our third round of this now, right? Where you're going to be entering the data. What that also means is you're getting to that point where that first sort of shock and, oh my goodness, we have a whole lot of new processes to develop. We're getting to that point of what we call mature processes, and where you have a chance to say, hey, how do I do this a little better? How do I make my data just that little bit more valid, cleaner? How do I make sure my new folks are on the same page with my old folks, right? And all of that is data validity. You'll notice I haven't even gotten past our welcome slide yet because I'm so excited about all of this. But the reason it's good to get into that third year is because we can really start to, one, see the power of that comparison, begin to really know what does that mean when we're all measuring the same thing. So that's exciting, and I hope in the next year we'll be able to start talking even more about that. But it also means we can start saying, okay, how does this process work? What am I doing to make sure that those data, however they get entered into 21 APR, whether it's manual by your subgrantees, whether it's manual at your state level, whether it's through API and all of the bazillion different things that can mean, that what gets in there is the most valid, the cleanest, and on-time data possible. When that happens, that means that we tell the best possible story to Congress, because the work you all do, it is so valuable. The work this field does saves lives. Saves lives. None of you doubt that. All of you know that. But this is the vehicle that we get to talk to Congress about it. You have heard me say it many times, but I take every chance I can to remind us all of it. It is that important. It is how we keep the lights on. Don't ever doubt that those conversations about data, they are hard. And I know sometimes we just don't necessarily want to do it, or it's not the thing you love maybe quite as much as I love. But this is the opportunity to tell the story. Not only do we get the chance to tell Congress, we're required to, and they have to listen if they're going to give us more money. right? That's the way the appropriations process works. So we want to take that chance, and we want those data to be the best possible data. We want them inclusive. We don't want to leave kids behind. We don't want to leave data behind, because this is the chance to tell the story. So, I will calm down now. Now that we're all excited about the why, because the why is the why. It's why we're here. It's why we do what we do. It's why you can get a little fired up about data, even if it's not your thing, and I'll bring the rest of the excitement around it, okay? And pass it around a little bit. All right, so we're going to talk about 21 APR. We're going to launch into our third round of putting in the new GEPRA. We cannot call them new GEPRA anymore, y'all. It's just GEPRA. They're just the GEPRA, right? We're going to launch into our third time around putting in those GEPRA. And we're going to do it well. And we're going to start today by making sure that you're ready for your state configuration and you're ready for this next year. If you have a laptop with you, you will be able to log in, do this in live time. I have lots of colleagues here who can come around and help you if you have questions. If you don't want to do that, or you're ready to do this on your own, that's okay too. You can follow along. But 21 APR is open for business, so it's time to get our house in order and get ready. All right, so why is this? I don't know why it's got a thing in the middle of my screen. Okay, you all know who I am, so we'll move on from that. And the agenda we're going to talk about today is I do want to go over just a couple of important system updates. As always, throughout the cycle, we will have just-in-time support. As we go into each next phase, we will have webinars and trainings associated with those times. So you do not need to remember everything. We are not going over each aspect of it. We're focusing on the launch. But I do want to just give you a heads up about a couple system changes so we can have that sort of in the back of our head. And then we'll go into the setup window and state configuration. I'm going to go over that briefly here, and then we'll go into the system so you have a chance to be in the system looking at your state configuration. You can pop that hand up if you need some help with it. We're going to do a couple of breakout groups after we're done with that and just talk about what we're doing around that validity, what we're doing to be the best we can be, and getting back to that why. And then we'll take some questions. You can, of course, ask questions along the way as well. Okay. So, I don't know. There's a thing in the middle of my screen, so I'm trying to make it go away so I can actually see the slide. Yeah, possibly. Oh, wait, it went away. Okay, we're good. All right, sorry about that. It was like blocking the entire screen, so I could not see it. Okay, so, oh, now it's doing subtitles. Okay, yeah. It's good, it's inclusive, so it's excellent. Okay, back to our regularly scheduled programming of reporting designation. All right, so when we talk about the setup and we talk about going into the SEA setup window, there are three key things that we have to talk about: reporting designation, ELP setup, and our date. So that's what we'll be really mainly looking at when we're looking at state configuration. And you see that here. Okay, 1 second, sorry. Where's the system update slide? No. It's just, okay. All right, I think we have it on the right place now. Sorry about that. Okay, so there's a couple of changes that are happening in reporting designation, but they're not changes that you necessarily are going to think about. It is exactly the same on the screen. What I want to impress upon all of you is during the reporting designation process, we choose, or you choose for your state, whether you're reporting all year, right? So that means you have a 12-month program, or you're reporting school year and summer. So separate school year program, separate summer program. Let me have a show of hands. How many of you are all year states? That tracks, it's about half, right? And we don't need to do a show of hands. I'm going to assume it's the rest of you who are the other category. So one of the things that we have you do each year during the reporting designation is to go through the process and make sure that, in fact, you are reporting according to the Big P policy. Big P is right here at this table, right there. They should have a giant big P above their table, right? And that Big P policy says that there's only certain states or certain conditions that allow you to be an all-year state. So one of the things that we're asking you to do is make sure you're really paying attention to that and not just sort of checking the box. We had a couple of issues over the course of the last year where folks erroneously set up their state incorrectly, right? And, you know, mistakes happen, but in this case, you are literally telling the database what to look like for the folks who are going to enter it. So it is one of those, let's pause, let's take a minute, let's make sure we're answering the questions. And you do want to really think about, am I an all-year state? Am I truly and really a state that has a 12-month program? We are going to take the opportunity to make sure that we double check that, share that information with the department and the program officers associated with each state. One, so that everyone can make sure we have it set up right. We don't want those states that had just accidentally sort of gotten in the wrong situation. We don't want that to happen again. But two, we also do want to make sure you're setting it up with the correct intention for your data, right? There are some cons to being an all-year state, okay? So one of those cons is that you can't say anything about your summer program. Your data are not disaggregated. It is literally, by definition, all year. And for some folks, that is exactly the right decision, and that's fine. But let's remember the why, right? And the why is we are reporting to Congress about the 21st century program. So when we don't have information on summer, or when you don't disaggregate your summer information, it does mean you have less information about the different parts of your programming. So this is a small p decision, but what we are asking you to do is go through the steps, think through it, make sure you're making the right decision for your state. One thing in particular that will be flagged, and I'm telling you this ahead of time so you know it, so if you happen to get an email from one of these lovely people right here in front of me, you know why, is if you were one thing last year and you move to a new thing, we're going to flag that and we're going to double check, right? So your program officer might reach out and say, tell me why you're all year all of a sudden, right? Oh, wait, it was an accident. Hey, let's fix that, right? Or, okay, here's your reasoning. Let's talk through that, okay? Because this is not necessarily a decision that should be switching year to year to year to year, right? There would need to be a fundamental shift in your programming to warrant that shift, right? If that's happened, okay, right? But if it hasn't, either because of an error or you just weren't quite sure and you picked something, we're going to make sure that gets taken care of with the support of the department before we get into data collection, where in a database, it's like a desk drawer, right, or a filing drawer. That filing drawer has been created or hasn't been created. So when we say it's all year and it was supposed to be school year and summer, there's no filing drawer over here, so the data doesn't have anywhere to go. So we do need to make sure the database is physically set up correctly. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, cool. So now that we've had this little chat, I know all of you will really, during the reporting designation here in a little bit, make sure you answer the questions, think about it for your program, and answer it correctly. If you have moved to a new category, the system will flag it to us when we run the report, and we will reach out to talk to you about it. And there could be another situation where we also reach out based on anything you've written, or if something strikes us as we're not quite sure this is right, we might reach out and say, hey, can we just have a quick chat about this, okay? All right, so the next system item that I want to chat about is not actually in state configuration, but I just wanted to let you know that we're making this change because it's one that is not really a larger change, but it's a change in the way things are going to show up. As I said, we will have lots of just-in-time information, right? Webinars, all of that good stuff. So this is not the last time you're going to see this. But in the past, there's been some confusion about what a zero means, right? And all of the tables were pre-populated with zeros. So you went in and you changed it. And the idea behind that was to sort of make it easier if you didn't need to put something in. But the problem with that was it could be confusing to subgrantees about whether or not it was a zero or they were putting a zero in. Now, what is going to happen is you will put in your participant data like you always do. And I'm going to give you a specific example. So let's say you have 9 participants in a particular grade, in grade 5, and then when you go to your outcomes table, the only thing that will be highlighted is where you actually have participant data. So you're not going to see zeros everywhere. The system is going to be grayed out except for where you have to put data in, okay? Now, here's the key piece. On occasion, the right answer is 0. Because if the question is, you had 9 participants, and how many of those improved in fill in the blank GEPRA, right, improved in their state assessment or improved in, it is possible the answer could be 0. We don't want it to be. We're working towards it not being, lots of not zeros. But it could be that you have a 0. So now, when your subgrantee enters, either in your homegrown system or directly into 21 APR, the 0, it's very clearly conveying there was 0 improvement. Does that make sense? So you will have to enter the 0, but the system will be highlighted. It'll tell you, it's like a beacon, enter data here, and everything else is grayed out. All right? Now, when we get to outcomes, there's going to be training on this. There's going to be webinars on it. But it's a bigger one, and as you're talking to subgrantees, I wanted to highlight it to you so you can start thinking about that. And you might ask, well, why are they making this change? And if any of you have had subgrantees who actually had a 0, that's the answer why, right? It's not as clear as it should be. When something in the system isn't as clear, that's also a validity problem because your subgrantees then consequently don't understand. So all of us work together to keep making training changes, system changes, communication changes, documentation changes. All of those things make our data better, make it more valid and cleaner data. And this will help ultimately. In previewing it, I think it's actually fairly self-explanatory and it will be easier for your subgrantees, but with all change comes the need to communicate that change, right? So stay tuned, there'll be more information, we'll roll it out formally. This is not until data entry period 2, right? So we're way forward here, but let's just sort of be thinking about what that means broadly for subgrantees. Okay. So, just as sort of a point of information, I do want to go over our dates here. And you'll see July 30th through August 13th is the SEA setup window. That's what we're focusing on here in a few minutes, okay? That's that time period to make sure everything is ready and set for your subgrantees in the system. The second date is August 22nd. Notice that time period. Anyone have a hypothesis as to why between August 13th and August 22nd there's a time lag? I may have just mentioned it, right? That's when we're going to check your reporting configuration. We're going to go back, we're going to make sure everything's okay, and we might check in with you. So we've built that in so we don't run into any issues, okay? And that goes through November 13th. We then close data entry 1. Similarly to last year, you'll continue to have the ability to have one person have editing privilege, but only that one person, right? In case you catch an error, you can go back. Data entry period window 2, November 14th through March 26th. And you might notice it's a tad bit later. So where's Minnesota? That's all, it's not all Minnesota, but I'm going to blame Minnesota. We do have a few states, not just Minnesota, but it was fun to pick on our friends in the north, who they get their data very, very late from the state, and this will make sure everyone actually has their state data back. And as you know, that does not mean you have to wait, right? If that doesn't work for your cycle, you have the ability, we're going to look at it here in about 2 seconds, in your reporting designation to say, hey, or in your SEA setup to say, hey, these are the dates in West Virginia. These are the dates in North Carolina. And that's then what you communicate to your SEAs. You have that ability. So again, when we talk about data processes, you need to know the cycle in your state. When do your data come in? How long do you need to validate them? What's the school and LEA and CBO cycle that makes sense for you given the big P? Big P, right on that screen right now. And then within the system, you can set your small p decisions. This way, that little bit longer period of time, we know all the states can get it in, but use it for your state to make sense for the most valid data and to give yourself the time that works in your state with your state context. That's what small p is about. Okay, so, all right, so now what we're gonna do, I do wanna just highlight before we go actually into the system, I just wanna spend a few minutes talking through what we're gonna see, okay? Because, you know, we're all really 5th graders still. And as soon as we go into the system, right, we just want to go and we want to do our thing. So let's level set, take a look at what we're going to see, then we'll switch into the system and I'll guide you through where to be looking. So if you're new to the system, you can watch us do it. And if this is easy for you, you can go ahead and do it and pop your hand up. Okay, so there are 3 key items that we want to accomplish during the SEA-only setup window. The first is the reporting designation, and we've just talked about that at length. It's an important decision. You're going to take the time to go through each question and think about it for your state and your state context. The second period, data entry open and close dates, same thing. What works for your process? And many states have found that having a different close date makes a lot of sense, right? How many of you sometimes feel like you might be herding cats, right? There's a little bit of herding cats that's happening. I hear you, right? So this gives you that ability to put that cushion so you're not getting the phone call or the email again from the department and your PO saying, hey, what's up? Your data's late, right? That's what we're trying to avoid. And then the last one is expanded learning program, formerly This was referred to as ELT, and I know some of you still use that acronym ELT. Statute says, don't do it. Andrea, look at her. She did not like that. Statute says very clearly, I can highlight it for you, ELP, or Expanded Learning Program. So here's the thing with this. The reason this is at the state level is oftentimes, even though you might only have a few subgrantees who are using this, if we put it at the subgrantee level and the center sees that, they think, oh yeah, I do that. And all of a sudden, you didn't know you were doing expanded learning program, but you have 15 centers that think they're doing it and they put that in, all right? So that's why it's so important. It's an easy one. It's yes, no, but again, not something to just skip over, right? Because if you erroneously say, yeah, we do this, every single one of your centers gets asked about their ELP, right? So that's the consequence of the database. It creates the filing cabinet for ELP when you click yes. So again, know your state policy, know your state program, and we're all good from there. So those are the three things that we want to set up during the SEA only setup window. Now, I mentioned you're going to take the time to think about your reporting designation. I'm not going to read them out loud, but those are the definitions of the 10-month or school year and summer designation versus the all year. Technically, you could also choose a school year only. We have never had a state choose that option. So every state usually has some summer programming, even if it's smaller than their full program during the school year, okay? So you can take a look at those ahead of time. They are also in the system, but priming yourself now. If you are new and you haven't done this before, take a look at it, because you might be going in and you're going to follow what's been done, but you want to know why you're doing it. It needs to make sense to you because this is your state now, right? You're now the SEA coordinator for this brand new state. I'm looking at you, Tennessee, but we have a number of new folks. So you do want to know why, right? And if you're not sure and it says, hey, I'm an all-year state, you might want to say, hey, is there documentation on that? Right? How do we get to this decision? Do I know? Right? Those are good things to be asking, especially when you're coming in. And that's what we mean by take the time, understand your policy, understand your program before you say, yes, I'm a 10-month summer program or I'm an all-year program. Same thing with expanded learning program, right? Ask the question, look for the documentation, because there are real consequences for the literal database and the literal questions that are asked of all of you and subsequently your subgrantees in the data. Okay? Does that make sense to everyone? Can I have like shake of hands, thumbs up, thank you. Yes, I love it. Look at that excitement about data. I love it. You guys are awesome. That's fair. I'll take it. Michael's good. And Marcia, that is a lie. I know you. You get excited too. All right. And again, for definitional sake, you can take a look at that. That's what expanded learning programs means. I can't tell you what it means in your state. I don't know. You have to know what it means in your state. If you have done this in the past, you will want to know why, and you will want to know where, okay? So if when you go into the live system, you get there and you realize, hey, I'm not 100% sure, that's okay, right? You have till August 13th. You can still go back and you can figure it out. I would rather you raise the question and figure it out than set up your database incorrectly. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so you all have heard me say, at least some of you have heard me say, that at the beginning of any data cycle, you gotta clean your house, right? You wanna clean up your house because you're inviting people over, and those people are gonna put data in, okay? One way or another. So there are a couple things to think about when you're thinking about cleaning up your house. Now, this is not strictly in that SEA only menu, right? But during this time period, it's a good practice and it's the right cadence to be examining who is in your system. So the one thing to consider is your different user types, right? That's a piece of it. And then you have your SEA super user, only one per state, your SEA users, and your grantees. You see below there, and I won't read it out, what those different permissions mean. Again, refreshing your memory about what that means and who has those permissions in your state, it's just a good practice. For some of you, it might be a 30 seconds on a screen. Yep, I'm good. For others, either because you're new or there's been some substantial change, you're going to go in and you're going to say, oh, that person's still there? Let's take care of that, right? So remember how often we talk about planning has to be explicit and calendared. This is a moment you have. It's set for you. We create the SEA only time period where you know, let me get my house in order, let me clean that house up, so that my data experience, whether it's for my subgrantees coming directly into 21 APR or whether it's through API, is as clean as possible, is set up correctly. It's the time, it's the moment. So that's one consideration you want to be thinking about right there. We've put together this cute little checklist here. Here's some items that you just want to think about when you're going to clean your house, right? Review your grantees and centers. Are they right? Update grantee and center contact information and details, right? That can sometimes be a little tedious, but taking the time to do it now means the information is correct as you go through your data collection cycle. Add new grantees and centers. That is going to depend on your cycle and your award and all sorts of things. This is not the only time you can do it, but it's a good time if you have them to make sure everything is set up, right? And then delete old grantees and centers. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And properly name your grantees to avoid duplication. I can't tell you all how often something like this happens. And our awesome folks at Help Desk, shout out to Alex and Gar, they're in the audience. We love them. Yay. And they're going to be helping us out here in just a minute. But we get questions about, is this the same one? Is it different? You know, and the reality is that's your center. So you actually need to know the answer to that. We'll help you think through it, absolutely, reach out to us, but you do want to make sure that you have the correct names. There are situations where you may have the same name of a school in your state in two totally different sections. So you need to make sure you know whether that means you're putting, AB School 1 in one place and AB School 2 in another place. You can put something in the name to help you understand that, but you do want to make sure you're aware of that. Again, cleaning up the house. That's the metaphor that we're doing. The database is a house. We're inviting people over. When it's messy, they can't contribute, right? They don't want to pay attention because it's all messy, right? Okay. So a couple thoughts about adding and deleting grantees. We do get questions about this a fair amount, particularly around deleting. And I think that the big thing that you want to be thinking about is grantees should only be deleted in certain circumstances, but those circumstances are fairly clear. If it's carried over from a previous year and it's no longer receiving funds, you can delete it. That doesn't mean you're taking away their previous data. It just means they're no longer in the filing drawer for this cycle saying, give me data, give me data, give me data. Their old data's still there, right? It'll never go away. We put it in the filing cabinet, right? But if you have it out there and it's not getting money anymore, it's going to wonder why it's not getting new data, because it didn't know it didn't get funding anymore, right? The database doesn't know that. So that's a good time to just delete that. It's no longer getting funding. Get it off, get it out of the house. It's in the old data set. We filed it away. We're good to go. If it's obsolete, a duplicate, or a test entry, a lot of times folks put in test entries just sort of by, they're trying to make sure they've got it right, and they forget to delete them, and that can be confusing. So again, clean up your house. Take a look at the test entry. And then the other one, which is somewhat similar to the first one, is if it does not have programming for the current reporting period, you can delete it. However, if you know that it's going to get, if it's just temporary, then you would just leave it there in order to, and you would mark it as, yes, you know what I'm trying to say, not, what's the word? Thank you, inactive. See? Y'all don't need me anymore. You would set it as inactive for that term. If it's a longer period of time, like they stepped out, you can delete it and add it back in. That's a choice you can make. My personal thought on that is if you know it's still in your funding cycle, I would leave it in and set it as inactive, but you have the option to control that as you see fit. You know your house the best. The requirement there is you got to go in and do that, right? You have to know your data, own your data. It's your data, right? So if it makes the most sense for you to delete it temporarily and add it back in, you can make that choice. Just don't forget to add it back in. However, if you know it has not been funded in this cycle, it is no longer receiving funds, the better option is to fully delete it. We have its old data. That data doesn't go anywhere, and you're not in that situation of having to mark it inactive or forget to mark it inactive, and you're like, oh, why is this here? And everyone's trying to finish at the last minute. It just makes more sense to clean up your house. Got it? So what are we gonna do? What are we cleaning? That was weak, y'all. I'm sorry. We're gonna try that again. What are we cleaning? That was better. That was better. All right. Okay, so we're going to step into the system now, and my good friend and colleague Alex, who is the master of driving in the system, will be driving for us. We love you, Alex. And I'm going to actually step down here and grab one of these mics and walk you through it. You are welcome. If you want to get your laptops out and log into your own system, you can do that, and you can be live in time. All of my colleagues here at that back table are excited to come out and help you if you need any help, or you can just follow along as I'm talking and you can log in later. That's fine too. But that way you have a sense of what it looks like fully in the system. All right.
Hello. Okay, good. Can you hear me?
Okay, so I'm going to come stand over here because although I do have dreams about 21 APR, I do still have to actually look at it in order to talk about it. I can't just, conjure it. Okay, so when you log in, and if anyone is having trouble logging into their system and really wants to be in their system right now, just raise your hand, and one of our fine helpers will come out and help you do that. But when you log in, you're going to land on this page. You all have heard me talk many times about the multiple ways we can navigate once we get into 21 APR. We have the items that ask us questions and tell us or help us figure out where we want to go, especially if we don't remember where everything is. That's really helpful because sometimes even I forget where everything's located. But we always have our friend, the left-hand navigation, that tells us, gives us the option just to navigate. And that left-hand navigation is on every screen, so you'll never lose your left-hand navigation. And you can always hit home to come back right here. So if you need those questions just to remind you, they're there. So today, our most important thing that we want to do is set up our house, right? So that means we want to do our state configuration. And Alex is going to take us right there. And you see it goes under settings. And we come in, and there are two things, right? We can manage our users, and we can view or edit our state configuration. I actually want to take us over real quick to view manage users, just to remind you where it is that you can locate your users, right? We were just talking about having a clean house. So right when you come into your state configuration page, right when you come into settings, you can go into manage users, and it's going to list every single user, and you see that user type, right? It's right there. So again, for most of you, we're talking a quick review. You go onto the page, you go down the page, you're like, yep, that makes sense. Yes. That would mean that you do not have permission to get to that page. You're not the super user. Then that means that it's not configured for you as a super user. So we'll have one of the smart people over there come and help you. Yeah, it could be that it's logging in you as a different user or something like that. So, hi, smart people over there. Can someone come help North Carolina and look at their page? Okay, so in any case, when we come here, this is where we can very quickly ascertain, do our users make sense? So it's a quick validity check. It's a quick way to just say, hey, it makes sure. I guarantee you that if I ask you next year, how many of you checked your users last year when we talked about this, and how many of you found a user that wasn't supposed to be on there, at least 5 of you will raise your hand. Because we forget to check. We might remember when it's a super user, but we forget when it's someone on our staff who got moved over to a different office or that kind of thing. So it's a quick and easy check. All right, Alex, can you take us back to state configuration? So look how he's using that left-hand navigation. Takes us right back to state configuration. And what's great about this is this geolocates you in the database, right? So this is telling you, this is where I am, right? So it takes you, it highlights, it says you're in state configuration. Now this is our main goal for right now. This is what you need to set up in order for your data set, in order for your individual database for New York, for North Carolina, for Ohio, for each one of those to be correct for your state. This is what has to happen, okay? So the first one we see is reporting designation. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to walk you through the questions so you see them. And if you're in the system, you can follow along. You can make the reporting designation, or you can just make a note, this is what I'm going to do. So we are going to read these questions, and it says the first most important question is, does the state offer 21st CCLC programming during the school year only? So I happen to know none of you will say no. Well, none of you will check that, right? Like all of you have summer programming. So we want to say no. And that brings up the next question. And those of you who've done that before, remember it goes question by question. So the next question is, does the state offer 21st CCLC programming during the school year and at some or all centers during the summer? And we're going to say yes. So our next question comes up and it says, does the state require that programming be included in every 21st CCLC program with summer serving largely the same students and using the same curriculum or methodology? This is the money shot. That's the question that's most critical to really determining whether you're a 12-month program or a 10-month plus summer program, right? If you are not predominantly using and serving the same kids at predominantly, like really almost all of your centers, you are not a 12-month school or program, right? By definition, you are not a 12-month program. Can there be, one center that maybe doesn't fall in there? Sure. But we are talking about the predominance, the intention that you are setting out in your RFA. We expect summer programming, right? Yes, absolutely. Could that summer programming be slightly consolidated where some programs are all at one site? That's all okay. But when it's not intentional, when you're not setting it out as part of what you're trying to accomplish in Massachusetts, in Rhode Island, saying, here in this state, we offer a 12-month program, then you're really a 10-month program plus summer. That's what you have to think through. And yes, there are some little nuances, and that's why you have to think through it, right? So that's the question you have to answer. So in this case, we're going to say no. We're going to say no, we don't do that. For this question, Alex, click no.
This one here?
Yeah. So then the next question then says, does the state offer 21st century programming during the school year at some or all centers during the summer with summer funded under a separate grant competition? We're going to say yes to that. Okay, so the magic 8 ball tells us that we're a school year in summer. So when you're looking at those questions, does that make sense based on the questions that I answered for Guam, which is not fictitious but doesn't have a 21st century program? So we use it a lot. So Guam here, it does not have summer programming at all its sites. It does not require summer for all of its grants. And when it funds summer, it does so under a separate grant competition. That is not an all-year program. That is a summer program and a school year program, pretty distinctly. Which one? Oh, if that was a no? Okay. Well, let's try it. Let's change that last answer to no, Alex. Yep, right. Yes, that one.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, except I can't tell who's talking.
Tennessee. Okay, say you do not require summer programming, but some sites do have summer program, but it's not a separate competition.
That's okay. So if it's not a separate competition, you can still report summer and school year because it's not required, right? So to your point, generally when things start getting sort of complicated, like if you're answering things that might be conflicting and we think you might be answering incorrectly, the system will say, hey, could you reach out to us so we could be a thought partner and just talk through this real quick? But you can go ahead and answer that and sort of figure that out. But to Tennessee's question, if you only have summer programming in a few sites, then again, somewhat by definition, you are not an all-year program because it's only in a few places, right? If it's predominant, if it's almost all, if the exception is not having summer programming, then you would tip towards all year. Does that make sense? You do not have to have an extra competition in order to say that. And we can actually maybe add some language to just help make that more clear there. Good questions. This is why we're always having continuous improvement. The really big issue is that if you don't have summer programming at the vast majority of your programs, then by definition, most of your programs are school year and you just have a few summer. So if you report everything as all year, you're losing out on those few places where summer is happening. And we're not in the spirit of what is being asked of us of the GEPRA, which remember, distinctly say summer and school year, right? When we look at it, we're not in the spirit of that. You haven't set out Tennessee's program to say, here in Tennessee, we offer an all-year 12-month program. All of our programs are required to have a summer program. Many states do that. Tim?
Is there a way for us to see what we did last year for us new people?
Yeah, absolutely. Just send a note to the help desk and we'll help you through that. Yeah. I would tell you, but I might get it wrong. I'm pretty good at it off the top of my head, but we wouldn't want to do that. So just reach out to the help desk and Alex will hook you up. Okay, you're good. All right. Yeah. Well, and honestly, no, I hear you. And so maybe that's something we should change. But ultimately, the reason we put that in there is because when you get into sort of these more complex scenarios, we found for the most part, SCAs want to talk to someone. They want to just say, hey, wait a second, let me look at this, or am I doing this right? Or they're not necessarily answering it, or they don't have all the information. So again, sometimes we put safeguards in the system just to sort of help you get the right information. The consequences for setting the database up wrong in this case are big, right? Because that whole filing drawer is wrong. So we do want to sort of just make sure, hey, do we got this right? So we'll consider with the department, should we put an asterisk there, or is there another way of doing that? But overall, the thing I want you all to think about is how predominant is my summer programming? Is it fundamental to the way I talk about Massachusetts 21st century? Is it part and parcel of the way we think about 21st century in my state? Then all year's the right answer. And for many of you, it is the right answer. But for some of you, it might not be, and I want you to just think through that. Because again, the spirit of what we're being asked in the GEPRA is to report on summer and school year. So again, when it's part and parcel of what you're doing, then you're reporting broadly on your program, it's okay. But if you're not really doing that, then we want to be true to what the GEPRA is asking, and we want the opportunity to also showcase and report on what is distinctly happening in the summer, right? Out of school time programming is absolutely after school. It is absolutely also summer programming, and we all know that, right? But part of what the department does with all of these data is be able to report on that, is to be able to say to their leadership, to Congress, to others who ask, here's how many places have distinct summer programming. Here's what's happening. So we do want that information to reflect honestly what is happening in your state. Lishandra, would you? The reporting periods are the same. I'll come right back to you.
I was just saying, sorry. Yeah, what Deborah is saying is spot on. Most recently, we received a request from senior leadership wondering what summer programming looked like for 21st century. And if those data are not parsed out, it's kind of difficult to tell. So if it is the way that Deborah has described, if it's 10 months plus summer, then we really expect for it to be reported that way. Again, it's tied to funding. They're realizing more and more the value of summer programming, and if we can say our kids need it, our kids are making improvement, it goes a long way. So, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. It's awesome. I will be right with you. Let me just real quick come back to Elizabeth. So again, we'll go in more detail throughout the reporting cycle. And I don't have my fancy slide that shows exactly where it goes for the reporting cycle. But to answer Elizabeth's question, if you're reporting on summer and school year, it's the same data collection window. It's not like the old system where we had fall data and spring data and summer data, right? You're going to report them all at the same time. So you're going to put your activities, your staffing, and your participation in for your school year, your 10-month data, and then in the same window, you go in and you put it in the summer. It just opens the filing drawer. right? It opens the filing drawer for summer. If you say you're all year, we only open the all year filing drawer. So we have to know to open the summer filing drawer, and that's what you have to tell us here. In the back, you had a question?
Well, are you worried about duplicative data when you separate out the
No.
school year? Okay. And then are you worried like outcomes? For summer, you're not going to have any different outcomes.
Yep, you're correct. So your outcomes are the same if your kids are largely the same, but if you don't have the exact same program, you may have some different kids regardless. So we're not worried about duplicative data because the question is what happens in the school year and what happens in the summer. It's still happening in the summer. That programming happens in the summer. The questions that are asked at the national level are highly aggregated. So they're looking at big, large-scale trends, and we want to be able to answer those, as LaShondra was just saying, about summer, truly and honestly. Again, for some of you, all year makes perfect sense. You're setting it out in your RFA, and you're saying, in my state, whatever that state is, we provide all year after school and summer programming as part of our programming. This is what 21st century means in our state. But for others of you, you're not doing that. Whether it's because you only offer summer through separate competition, whether it's because you have particular items that some places do summer, other places don't, etc. There are different models for how that emerges. So you do not have to make this decision right this second, but this is exactly why we're here, is to say to you, think about this. Be familiar with it. If you think you have the wrong thing selected, that's okay. Let's get that filing drawer right and get our data correct. Reach out, we'll help you with that, we'll talk through that. If you're new, verify. Why is it that I'm so sorry, Tennessee, I'm just gonna keep picking on you, but you're so helpful and doing such a great job already. But Anessa here in Tennessee just started in April. Anessa, do you know what your state designation is? Good job. All right, gold stars. But, you want to know why. You want to know how you got to this point. So this is the moment to figure it out. All right, I only have a couple minutes to finish up with you, and we are actually almost done, so that actually works out really, really well. But once you get through your reporting designation, the next two things that you have to do during the SEA only setup window is your open and close dates, right? This is your herding cats technique. If you want it to close before the federal big P policy end date, this is where you set it up. And you will do one for data entry window 1 ending at November 13th. So you want to set that a week early, 2 weeks early, do it, right? Give yourself the time to review your data, right? That's your tool to use. Then you'll set it also for your second window. And this is super easy because it's just a calendar you click on and you can then press what date you need. And you'll notice that we have the open close dates right above it, so you don't even have to remember them, you just get to look at them. All right, so that's data entry dates. And then the last piece that you have to make sure that you set is right here, Expanded Learning Program, formerly ELT. It's a yes or a no. That's all you have to do, yes or no. But remember, if you say yes, every single center is going to be asked about Expanded Learning Program. So be sure, double check it. Make sure you know what's going on in your state to open or close the right filing drawer, okay? So, go ahead.
So, if every single state is asked about ELT, it can mark no, right?
Yes.
That's fine, because out of all the programs, we might have 2.
That's correct, right. Yeah, absolutely. But then in your case, if you're saying, yes, we have ELP in Ohio, right, and that's great, right, it's a great program, then you want to make sure in your subgrantee communication that you're saying to folks, if you're a manual entry state or you're however you're gathering your information, most of you are not ELP. Talk to me or double check with me or whatever that means for your small P systems. It has consequences, right? But absolutely, if you have ELP programs, you need to say yes. Right. Everything Shannon just said is awesome. Right? That's what you need to do. It was all great. All right. So thank you all so much. You know where the help desk is. We're here for the next 3 days. Feel free to reach out and ask for help if you're not sure about something. And we'll be happy to even just sit down with you and take a look at it. And I'm going to pass this over to Dr. Scroggins.
Thank you, Deborah and 21 APR team. All right, we're about to enter our final break for today from now until 4:20. And what you're going to actually do is transition to your breakout session with your respective program officers.